Today, we see both women and men voting. We see people of different races voting and being treated the same as a white. We see opportunities that are open to anyone who wishes. In the 19th century, it was all about the white men. Most women and men of different races were facing discrimination. It took one true leader to help gain equal rights for everyone, no matter what their sex or race was. As Susan B. Anthony once said, "It was we, the people, not we, the white male citizens, nor yet we, the male citizens, but we, the whole people, who formed the Union." Susan B. Anthony. Susan B. Anthony was born on February 15, 1820 in Adams, Massachusetts. Her parents were Daniel Anthony and Lucy Reed, and she had 6 siblings. She was born into a Quaker family, and they had a strong belief for social equality. When she was 6 years old, her family moved to Battenville, New York. After she turned 17 years old, she moved to Philadelphia, where she attended a Quaker boarding school. After one term, her family's financial problems forced her to stop her studies. To help this issue, she started teaching at a Quaker boarding school. When she was 26 years old, she moved to Canajoharie to be a headmistress of the female department of the Canajoharie Academy. This showed her interest in social reform. The academy closed in 1849, and she found herself increasingly drawn to reform activity. The rest of her life, she lived as a speaker. Susan B. Anthony met Elizabeth Cady Stanton in 1851 at an anti-slavery conference. Stanton was one of Anthony's lifelong friends. Both Anthony and Stanton attended the temperance convention, but Anthony was denied the chance to speak due to her sex. She later went into fighting for the right of women to vote after she realized women would not be taken seriously in politics unless women voted. Anthony took action with Stanton and established a Women's New York State Temperance Society. After establishing the Women's New York State Temperance Society, Anthony and Stanton formed the New York State Women's Right Committee. These establishments were the start of Anthony's exploration of different ways to fight for what she believed in, social equality. With her new establishments, she acted fast, beginning with campaigning for women to have the right to vote and own property. She also petitioned for women's suffrage. In 1856, Anthony decided to join the American Anti-Slavery Society. She became an agent with the tasks of arranging meetings, hanging posters, and distributing pamphlets. During her time as an agent in the American Anti-Slavery Society, she encountered many threats, such as armed threats and physical threats. Things were thrown at her and she was hung in effigy, but because of her strong belief in anti-slavery, nothing stopped her from being an agent. She served as an agent in the American Anti-Slavery Society until the Civil War in 1861. In 1866, Anthony and Stanton established the American Equal Rights Association. This association was established with a purpose for the same rights to be given to anyone, regardless of sex or race. In 1868, Anthony and Stanton produced a newspaper titled The Revolution. The Revolution was a weekly newspaper about women's rights. They both became editors for it and displayed their motto at the top: "Men, their rights, and nothing more. Women, their rights, and nothing less." In 1869, Anthony and Stanton helped form the National Women's Suffrage Association. The goal of this association was to create a federal women's suffrage amendment. Anthony put in all of her effort by giving speeches all over the country to convince people to support women's rights. In 1872, Anthony and two of her sisters voted in a presidential election illegally to challenge suffrage. She was later caught and arrested but refused to pay her fine. Because of this, women's voting rights were unable to be questioned at the Supreme Court. In 1881, Anthony began writing a book called The History of Women's Suffrage. She was working with Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Matilda Joslyn Gage and published the first volume in 1885. Anthony also helped Ida Husted Harper write and edit The Life and Work of Susan B. Anthony, a story of the evolution of the status of women. The book was a life story of Anthony and was published in 1898. In 1905, Anthony went to Washington, D.C. and met with President Theodore Roosevelt to convince him for an amendment to give women the right to vote. Soon after, Anthony died on March 13, 1906 in Rochester, New York at the age of 86. Her last recorded words were, "To think, I have had more than 60 years of hard struggle for a little liberty, and then to die without it seems so cruel." In 1920, 14 years after her death, the 19th Amendment was passed. This amendment gave all adult women the right to vote. This was named the Susan B. Anthony Amendment to honor her hard work and dedication. The U.S. Treasury Department honored her by putting her portrait on the dollar coin in 1979. Because of her contribution to society, the house she has lived in for 40 years is now a historical site located in Rochester, New York. The house now offers tours and welcomes visitors. Her hard work and dedication exchanged history for women greatly, giving all adult women the right to vote. She also played a big role in abolishing discrimination between sex and race. Anthony had explorations of different ways to stand up for what she believed in, such as petitioning, speaking, writing, and protesting. No obstacles she encountered, such as getting things thrown at her, armed threats, being hung in effigy, and getting arrested for voting illegally, stopped her from giving up. Susan B. Anthony exchanged history, giving all women independence and rights. Today, women can vote in elections and do anything they would like without getting discriminated. For over 60 years of her life, she was hard at work, but it was worth it as she forever changed the rights that women still have today.